Hello, I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and I want to thank all of our moderators, expert guests, and solution sponsors for participating in these Inside Jam panel discussions. This has been a big year of changes with the launch of the all-new, always-on InsideJam.com community site. For the past 4 years, everyone here at Solutions Review has been leaning in to build the Insight Jam into a celebration of enterprise technology, with best practices, expert analysis, and solution showcases. And we want all of you to join us there to keep the jam going into the new year and beyond. If you haven't joined Insight Jam, please do. And if you already have, take a moment to invite some of your colleagues. And again, thank you all for being here and enjoy today's discussion.
Solutions Review presents Inside Jam, a social media community for enterprise technology. Hello and welcome to the fourth and final day of Inside Jam Live. My name is Jonathan Paula, the Director of Multimedia and Events here at Solutions Review, and pleased to welcome you to the first panel of the day focused on data protection. And that panel is the Convergence of Storage and Security Key Implications. We've once again assembled a great group of people from around the globe to help talk about that. Doran, Andy, Bill, Carl, Erwin, and Jonathan, thank you for being here. Pleasure to host you. Doran, you've graciously agreed to moderate, so I'll let you kick off our introductions. 30 seconds or less. Tell the audience a bit about yourself and what you're most excited for today's topic.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks for joining me. So, very brief introduction. My name is Doran Youngwood. I'm the VP of Marketing at a company called Continuity. Continuity was founded about 20 years ago by a team of storage and data protection experts with the ultimate aim of helping our clients remain cyber resilient. And specifically with our flagship product, Storage Guard, we help to secure our clients' storage and data protection environment.
Hi, everybody. I'm Andy Fernandez. I'm the Director of Product Management at Haiku. At Haiku, we're a data protection as a service company. Our focus is to be able to protect your data regardless of whether it's on-prem, cloud, or in SaaS, but all managed by storage on the customer side. I'm really excited about today to really talk about data protection in the context of security. I think the industry has been very focused on prevention, but data protection has a critical role in this, and I'm extremely excited for today.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Bacinas. I am with Infinidat. I'm the Senior Director of Product Marketing. Infinidat is an enterprise-class storage company providing primary storage solutions and secondary storage solutions with enterprise-class feature sets such as availability, performance, scalability, and obviously cyber protection, which is paramount in today's world of data availability and data protection. So I'm glad to be here and looking forward to a great discussion.
Hello, my name is Carl Dallouin. I am CTO of Datadobi. We are a European software company building unstructured data management solutions. So unstructured data management are the vast lakes of file services, file servers, could be in the cloud, could be on-prem, object storage systems, and we look at all that stuff and we optimize it both for cost, for the maximum value, and for data protection purposes.
Hi everyone, I'm Erwan Girard. I'm the CPO for Ascality. So Ascality, we do private cloud storage, whether for file, objects. We have a fully distributed solution that is resilient across several data centers that can scale from 50 terabytes to hundreds of petabytes. Among our customers, we have companies from a wide variety of industries, government agencies, banks, medical, transportation companies. So for us, data and data protection, data access in any shape or form is key, and I'm very excited to discuss this here today.
Great to be here. I'm Jonathan Halsuch. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Racktop. We are the leaders in cyber storage, a solution that can be deployed at the edge, the core of the cloud to protect your unstructured data against advanced persistent threats, data theft from insiders or outsiders, or ransomware attacks, because the best time to stop data breaches before it happens.
Fantastic. Great to have this panel of subject matter experts. So before we dive in, let me spend a couple of minutes just setting some context and giving some background as to why we believe this topic is so important. The topic of convergence of storage and security is so critical, and why now? So I think we all understand that the business value of data continues to grow. making it an organization's primary piece of intellectual property. And when you think about it from a cyber risk perspective, attacks on data are clearly the most prominent threat to organizations. Regulators, cyber insurance firms are paying much closer attention to the integrity, the resiliency, and also the recoverability of organization data and also their systems. So the question is, what does that mean for storage? Well, one of the things that's happened in the last couple of years is that we've seen ransomware pushing storage and backup onto the IT agenda, and I'd even argue onto the corporate agenda. Threat actors such as Conti, Hive, Revil, these are some of the celebrities within the world of ransomware. They've been specifically targeting storage and backup systems. In fact, if I give you a couple of examples, just in recent weeks and months, a few weeks ago, one of the largest law firms, Allen & Overy, were hit by a ransomware attack that impacted their storage systems. And about another month and a half ago, a company called Johnson Controls suffered a massive ransomware attack, which also included deleted backups. In fact, the ransom note that Johnson Controls received from a group called Dark Angels specifically referenced in the note, files are encrypted, backups are deleted. You can check it out online. So while this isn't necessarily the first time ransomware groups have successfully breached their victims' storage and data protection environments, it's certainly one of the most publicized attacks. About a year and a half ago, we published a survey based on feedback from 200 security leaders. And one of the really interesting findings from that survey was more than 2/3 of respondents believe an attack on their storage environment will have significant or catastrophic impact. So it's not surprising that the threat actors realize that an attack on a storage environment could be argued that the single biggest determining factor to show if an organization will end up paying the ransom. And ultimately, this has forced organizations to look again at potential holes in their safety nets by reviewing their storage and backup strategies. Without a sound storage, backup, and data recovery strategy, I'd argue that organizations have very little chance of surviving any cyber attack, even if they do end up paying the ransom. So the first question I want to start, and I'll throw out to the audience, is why do you believe the security of storage is so essential for not just ransomware protection, but cyber resiliency overall, and why now? So, Andy, I'll pick on you. Do you want to kick things off?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I mentioned at the beginning that I was excited about is it's not a zero-sum game when it talks about protection and recovery. So you have to secure all of your sources. You have to make sure that you take your storage security seriously, networking all of your infrastructure, but also the ability to recover data from that as well. But one point that I actually want to highlight is organizations are doing a good job of protecting critical storage that they are in control of, things that they are leveraging for tier one applications. But they have an entire sprawl of services, applications that they're still responsible for that live entirely in somebody else's storage outside of their control. So one of the things that we urge, one of the things that we look at is, yes, for these tier one applications on your VMs on-prem, you're storing them, you're following the rules, you're doing this effectively, you're following worm policies and all of these. But what about all of the other critical services that are now running as a SaaS? Where are they stored? Are they in your control? How are you effectively able to recover from that? These are the areas that we look at, but protecting storage is critical, but being able to protect data across the entire estate is equally as critical.
Yeah, I think that's important, from the perspective of the size of the attack plane is enormous, and the value of the data to a company is, paramount. And, as it was stated, it's one of the top two concerns of CEOs, CIOs, CISOs, and things like that, anywhere you go and talk to, right? And being able to provide the levels of security, resiliency, and recoverability are hugely important. We look at that, and especially in our marketplace, being the extremely high end of the marketplace, where in essence the family jewels are being maintained. 25% of the Fortune 50 are our customers, for example. So it's a serious consideration. It's a serious concern. And, I think it's important for anybody who's in the vendor space to be focused on providing cyber resiliency technologies that can help either thwart, reduce the threat window, and also provide extremely robust orchestration and recoverability technology to help if those situations happen to occur.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think, just this week we saw hospitals in the West, Midwest get hit with ransomware, a data destructive attack where they had to divert, emergency patients to other hospitals, right? And you want to be able to withstand the attack and continue to operate, right? To deliver services and care and only contain and block the bad or malicious users and continue to deliver services. And I think what ransomware has done in the world today is brought this whole cyber threat to the front page, right? People are seeing day after day all the attacks you're talking about. It's affecting their daily lives. Colonial Pipeline was something that affected people's lives going on a vacation, right? Somebody's IT decision affected their ability to take their family on a vacation in the Southeast. And so more and more of these decisions are affecting the entire organization and their survivability. And I think the one thing that people have been very focused with ransomware is kind of thinking about how do we recover, right? And that's an important thing if you get to that point. But that's kind of the option of last resort. What you really want to do is like you said, reduce the threat window and detect the malicious and suspicious activity early, because it's on average that the adversary is on your network for 9 months before they're detected. And 89% of those ransomware attacks today have an exfiltration thing where they're stealing data, right? So we want to protect them not just from destroying your data, but the silent data theft where they're stealing intellectual property or secrets that you might not know about. And so we want to detect that as early as possible and stop it too.
Yeah, and I think what we see also is protecting the data, but also protecting the access to the data. Part of our customers, for sure, data is clearly a key asset, and you want to protect the data with backup. You want to be able to recover this. You want to be able to protect the backups. But also we have among our customers, like we're talking about medical, we can talk about banks, about government agencies. The moment the data is unavailable, the whole service is down. So we have some customers where if the access to the data is down, it means none of the banking agencies worldwide can operate. So protecting this with a storage solution that indeed allows our customers to use a backup engine to protect the data, but also make sure that the data cannot be tampered with. And I think we'll go through this also through the certifications, the new regulation that are now happening around data is really key, not only to protect the data, but to protect just the day-to-day operations of our customers. And for me, this is really a key within Scality to have these both, I would say, both aspects, being able to, on one hand, back up data and make sure this backup cannot be tampered with, but also protect the daily access, the availability of the data toward the company data infrastructure.
Yeah, to agree with that too, is that people think about high availability, they think about the health of the system, but the availability after an attack like that, you're going to have a lot less than any nines if you get hit with a bad cyber attack.
Yeah, we come from quite far. So if we built storage systems like 20 years ago, it was all about physical disasters and hard disks and MTBF. We all built that stuff. IT errors, misconfigs, user errors, and I deleted my file. But the architecture today is totally different. You have to think about malicious actors. It's people like someone said, it's 9 months in your network, and it learns what your things are doing, where your data is. It slowly goes and first deletes your backups or kills your backups because you don't see that. It stops your backup schedule, and then it gradually tries to destroy your hot data, and then it's over. So these things are what's happening. And indeed, data exfiltration is also a very big issue, because there's fines on that. You have to report it. It's a public event, and people are very afraid of that. Next to, of course, halting production and being done for an elaborate amount of time.
Yeah, it's really crazy, right? It's very easy for us to say that cyber, all these cyber resiliency and cyber attacks, cyber ransomware, malware, whatever it is, social engineering aspects of this are all, at the forefront of this. I live in Las Vegas. And very recently, the MGM attacks, right? I mean, to see a casino floor go dark, 100 to $110 billion revenue loss, a $2.2 billion hit in market cap, kinds of capabilities. So, the problem is well beyond what we typically used to relate to disaster recovery.
Correct.
When we talked about disaster recovery in the past, it was that 1 in every 5 or 10 year earthquake, or that hurricane that hit certain parts of the country, or some kind of natural event that we prepared for. And now we're talking about these things happening daily, right? Every minute, right? Every second, somebody's being attacked, maybe hundreds of thousands of times a day, with maybe not even knowing it. So to say, it's well beyond what we typically consider disaster recovery. And there's a whole new mindset that has to take place in order to build that infrastructure of resiliency, in order to be able to react to it, right? Because a hurricane is coming.
Yeah, and I think it impacts the data infrastructure in ways that may not be natural to people. For example, we're talking about backups. We're talking about having a ransomware being in the place for several weeks and therefore contaminating the backups one after the other. For a customer to be able to restore a good data set, it's usually a trial and error. We also see sometimes some government agencies coming in to trying to understand. So they do want to see these different stages of the attacks of the ransomwares, which means, in fact, that the ability to restore backup pretty rapidly is also key to the ability to the company to go back to business. And it's interesting. Backup used to be, performance was not fundamentally the first aspect of backup. It is becoming on the restore as a way to make sure you can restore efficiently backups rapidly to get back to a clean data set, and therefore get back to clean operations.
A huge challenge, right? Because backup repositories are gigantic, right? These days, and again, our customers too, we have a purpose-built backup appliance, and you could have, in theory, 50, 70 petabytes worth of effectively stored backup data there. And then, you disable that, then how do you get it back? That's part of, the strategy that we think about when we, build and implement our solutions. We have InfiniSafe technologies that are targeted exactly to those kinds of scenarios and those levels of data protection. But that's one piece of the overall puzzle, right? It's a challenge that will continue to be front of mind and needs an effective suite of solutions to be able to ultimately manage it effectively.
One thing I was going to bring up, actually, and everyone brought this up, both of these points. The first one was the RTO component. How quickly can you recover? And we've seen organizations that had backups, they knew they worked, but it would take so long to get that backup back that they paid the ransom anyways, because 10 days of downtime is unacceptable. So there we see the need from an RTO perspective. But the other thing that I want to talk about too is access. We talked about access. Even what constitutes a backup is very important today. Because if you think about on-prem, it was a snapshot backup of your VMs, you were fine. But what happens with SaaS applications? What happens with SSO providers? Think about that. Those are the crown jewels. That's what people use to get access and go on an encryption party. How do you protect those configurations and restore them to a safe point in time, and then kick out the person that had that breached your policies, whether it's access-based, role-based, you name it. So not only protecting the critical compute storage, but also the configurations required for access are extremely important.
Yeah, I think it's all moving to a new set of tools. That's the key, right? We can't use old traditional policies to solve new problems, right? DR was exactly what you're talking about. Natural disasters. You can't stop a hurricane, so you have to get out of its path and figure out how to recover in another location. What we're talking about today are man-made threats. They need different policies and reactions. You can potentially stop that threat, and you want to stop it as early as possible.
Yeah, it's a good point, Jonathan. I think it goes back to your introduction where you talked about this term coined cyber storage, right? And I think that kind of reflects this in new. It's not just a single solution; it's a series of different solutions that can ensure an organization can map some of the risks that we're seeing in 2023, 2024, and onwards.
And actually, Doron, I think this is very important as a message to convey. It's not one solution. There is not one silver bullet. It's really at every stage of the data infrastructure, have an understanding of what is protected, what is not, and how important this is. and backing up everything is good, but it's just the minimum, the minimum thing. Andy, you were talking about the time to recover. I think the average time to recover is 23 days. And we've been seeing on the market some companies taking 40, 45 days actually to recover to a proper, good data set that would allow them to restart business in a good way. So that's really for me, you're really spot on here, where it's all about rights, access rights, immutability of the data, backing up your crown jewels, your key data sets, doing the tests. So it's a whole new cyber storage, cyber resiliency storage. I think it's a good name. It's a whole new approach that people would think in the past banks would have to do, or government agencies would have to do. Now it's every single business in on the planet, I guess.
Yeah,
regardless of size.
Yep. And that's a good point. And I want to just move on to the next section. That's a really nice way in, because it seems that auditors, regulators, and industry standards also recognize this, and they increasingly pay attention to the security of storage and backup systems. And I believe in response, many organizations across many industries seem to be investing more and more efforts in defining, measuring, and continually improving security controls for storage and data protection. I mentioned a survey before, and I want to highlight one more really interesting finding in that survey, which was over 2/3 of respondents said that the security of their storage and backups was specifically addressed in recent external audits, which is, I think, something fairly new. And we've seen in the past probably year and a half, new publication of standards like NIST Special Publication 800-209, which is entitled Security Guidelines for Storage Infrastructure. We've, of course, had ISO 27001, which was published at the beginning of 2023, which for the first time referenced the security of storage and backups. And finally, beginning of 2024, ISO is publishing 27040, which is a specific requirement for storage security. And in that standard, they include around 220 storage security recommendations, of which 70% are classified as guidance and 30% are requirements. By the way, it's not just the industry standards. We're also seeing cyber insurance firms now mandating specific controls to ensure that organizations have active measures in place to protect their storage and backups. And someone mentioned immutability, regular backup testing, MFA for backups, the list goes on. So this is all fairly new. The fact that cyber insurance firms are incorporating this in their applications is a big deal. So the next question I want to throw out to the panelists is, do you encounter any changes, any shifts, any trends related to auditing requirements for storage and backup?
Absolutely. So cyber insurance prices have skyrocketed. I think we can all agree with that. So they do very deep analysis of what your company is doing. So we specifically are in the storage network and looking at data from all the different storage systems. And even the cyber insurance companies, the customers, they all demand things like software composition analysis, software lifecycle. They want to prove that nowhere in the whole path there can be any ransomware or open source library that's hijacked that can enter the system, because it has happened over and over. It happened on hardware chips. It happened on SolarWinds. It's happening all the time. So people are very skeptical nowadays to get any piece of software or even hardware in their network, and they demand more and more. And I think it's a good thing, in fact, because these decent processes will make all of us vendors and our customers much more secure, I believe.
I think I have a good anecdote on that. So we do see that also really clearly within our customer base. We used to send some security reports to some customers, and they were happy just to see in the past the headline security report, all good, and they wouldn't read it. And now we have some feedback like, hey, page 152, and I'm telling you, it's not a nice book to read. It's just a set of CVEs, software bombs, open software, lists. And we do see that they do read it to the last line, and they do comment back to us, and we have to answer. So to Carl's point, it's really, we do see the change in the behavior of our customers, and in such example. And for me, it's only the beginning. I mean, the amount of regulation that is coming year after year, the fact that we do see, for example, from the White House executive order, that there is a shift in they want to put a shift in the responsibility in the whole value chain to the one company in the value chain that would be the most adequate to solve the issue. I think it's a fundamental change, and it will. I'm sure it does have a lot of impact within Scality. I would expect among you also, but yeah, it does really change how we do things, and also how we prioritize security versus, for example, new features. That's a given. Huh?
It's very important, right? And the standards. I mean, we're just getting ready to publish a blog on NIST, from an Infinidat perspective, and it's important to understand that there's so many different pieces that apply to different sections of a corporate entity, that to have that set of alignment. And from a vendor perspective, right, we have, if you look at the NIST storage spec that was just talked about, there's a subset that we looked at it very carefully, and that subset is a very finite set of the overall NIST alignment and pieces, if you will, that vendors can specifically help customers align to, right? Ultimately, the customer, the end user, is the one that aligns to this. And I think it's important for us as vendors to make sure we tell the end users how we help them in that complex environment. And as always, right, having been in technology for years, when we have all of these organizations and all these regulations, the part that always starts to make it difficult is they come from so many different areas, and there's not a lot of synergistic functionality between some of those, right? They develop them for certain parts of the world, certain marketplaces, etc., which just makes it even that much more of a challenging for the end users, never mind how we help those end users kind of align to those.
So what we've seen is there's a shock state to the cyber insurance world, because the volume, the severity, but also the maturity of these attacks is on a different level. 5 years ago, you had to be a ninja to develop your own malware injection. You had to go and learn HTML and create your own email. Now I can prompt it. I can simply prompt an end-to-end attack with an LLM. A few years ago, it was an innovation that people could go and use ransomware as a service and buy a script and go execute. Now you can prompt attacks, and that's only going to get worse. And now that's a shock to the economics of an insurance policy, but we're also seeing extremely successful attacks where backup infrastructure wasn't configured effectively, and it was also encrypted, aka things like LastPass, right? These are disastrous attacks, and the attacks are only going to grow, but they're much more severe, and customers' environments are much more disparate. There are percentages of their estate that they have no idea who's running and how. And auditing also has to adapt to those type of microservices and cloud native approaches too.
I think you had a good point on properly configuring your whole data application chain. We had examples indeed where customers would tick all the boxes, but in fact would misconfigure at one point in time one of the application with regard to the other, which would just annihilate the whole benefit of the solution. And as I was saying earlier, it strikes into areas where we wouldn't have thought it would. For example, making sure that our customers are properly configuring our storage in front of the backup application, for example, is really key to make sure that indeed the backup are immutable, for example. But also on the other way around, we had some customers saying, "Okay, I'm gonna activate immutability on the storage, so I'm covered." Yeah, but then we can't delete anything. So your storage is going to grow, which is okay with us, but may not be okay with you. So the whole chain has to be checked, and I think it's our duty in the industry also to provide the end users who are not necessarily experts. And to your point, Andy, as the attacks get more and more refined, more and more elaborated, there's no chance our end users will become experts of all of this. So I think it's our duty also to prepare this and do the extra steps so that the end users can easily understand how to properly configure all of our software solutions, data protection solution, so that at the end of the day, the whole chain is real solid.
Yeah, I think that's important, right? You put the controls in place, and then you need to have the demonstration that the controls are in place continuously and properly. And it's not just getting through the audit too. Obviously, you want to be able to do that for insurance purposes, accreditation purposes, and things like that. But really what I hope is that we move, and as we get these regulations, it's going to become more apparent that we have to move just from kind of checkbox compliance to actually solving the problem, right? The insurance company wants you to prevent the attack. And as we see like the SEC regulations and government regulations, we really see, these nation states, criminal gangs, or insider threats being a true threat to the organization, right? And so I think boards and the executive C-suite need to treat and understand the information infrastructure in their environment enough that they can make decisions, not just say, well, I spent enough money this year, I should be fine. They need to really understand, what are the threats to them? How is it going to affect their organization if they got hit with something like ransomware, or they have an IP breach? How is that going to affect their business? And then had they across the board looked at it? Because I feel like especially storage is kind of where the least amount of investment has been made from a security aspect. They've made investments in multi-factor, they made investments in things like endpoint, but we all know there's ways to circumvent that. And the data lives on the storage. So why not put those protections as close to the storage as possible and start thinking about that differently? And we're starting to see in our customer base that they're seeing reductions in premiums to meet these, requirements and stuff. But really that next step is that, the management team sees the threats and understands the risks and how to get educated in stopping that, and have kind of a dashboard about the health of the organization against cyber threats.
We see customers absolutely panicking, like customers taking a backup of the backup. Happens pretty often. So they had, I think it was a big pharmaceutical company, 6 petabytes per week of new data stored on NAS, so SQL backups, and then they wanted the backup of that one going directly to object storage to be in an immutable form for a few more months, because it's a more affordable and a better solution. But again, then I hear myself explaining to that customer, like, okay, but you have to make sure that the thing you're backing up is good, or at least the backup that you're backing up is good before you do all that effort, and because the capacity is huge. And so these customers need to understand the full cycle. They need to understand what validation means, what isolation means, what sandboxing means, and it's really different architecture out there.
Yep. When you think about how it's changed, one thing we've learned is as long as there's humans touching software and hardware, there's a vulnerability. Right. That's what we've learned, right? As long as there's a human making a decision, there's a chance for exploit. There's more information about us than ever before online. It is easier than ever to social engineer somebody. And when you actually look at how many more people are touching critical infrastructure today, it's kind of scary, right? On-prem, you have a backup admin, you have somebody, but to run a basic web hosting service on AWS, you're using 10, 15 services, you're setting up VPCs, IAM, and EC2 instance, RDS. They all have their own specific configuration, their own specific points. Now, multiple people are touching all of these. You can have an intern accidentally overwrite some rules and completely declare your infrastructure. All of these points are now new areas where people can be exploited with way more people touching them. That's a huge component. And if they don't have a map and roles and responsibilities across the entire architecture, from bug tracking all the way to Terraform, then you have a vulnerability.
Yeah, I think multi-tenancy, IAM, so identity and right management and access management, all of these are key, in fact, and for sure, while our customers or end users can't be experts at everything, for me it's a key area where also I think we can help as an industry is, for example, on some of our products, we know that these products are targeted for IT generalists, so we know for sure these customers won't be the best possible experts. So we used to write a very good, precise documentation to make sure that everything was properly configured. We are changing that into point and clicks, and now we are doing, even for backup applications, like some point and click application, to make sure that you can't be wrong. If you follow this, you can't be wrong with setting up the user identity, setting up the IAM rules, setting up the bucket policies, whatever you may have to. And I think we might go one step further with regard to the regulation and drive our customers toward, hey, if you want to be compliant with NIST, if you want to be compliant with NIST 1 and 2 in Europe, for example, if you want to be compliant with the executive order coming from the White House in the US, you would have to follow all of this with regard to the storage. And it's a big step forward, and I think it's not always natural. Some people would be willing to develop more fancy features to better fit to the market need. But I think, Jonathan, you were mentioning this. I think the core need of the market today is to protect the data and make sure the whole thing can operate. And it comes before having even a better service to your customer. Is making sure you always have a service to your customers every time. So
totally.
Yeah. Awesome. So with that, I think there's a general recognition that data needs to be protected. More advanced solutions are required to protect the data, as well as the storage and backup systems. We mentioned the cyber insurance firms are recognizing this, auditors, regulators, as well as new industry standards. That's all very well and good. The question now is, who has to take ultimate responsibility for the security of storage and backups? Is it the CISO and their team? Is it the IT department, or specifically the IT infrastructure department and the storage and backup admins? Is it another team, or is it a combination of everything?
Yes, yeah, I mean, yeah, right. That's part of the complexity, right? That everybody's trying to sort through. And I think it was Jonathan that mentioned the board, even the boards of companies, right? From the board right on down to the backup admin. There's there needs to be a set of cohesive capabilities and understanding of what corporate direction is, what corporate mandates are, what corporate data protection ultimately means in today's world, right, compared to what we kind of considered in the past, and how that all plays, ultimately in the management of the business. It's not that simple, backup and recover scenario anymore. And it's about how fast, do you recover, right? When the RTO point came up, as much effort as we put into trying to prevent the attack from happening, it happens. Then it's a matter of, again, how fast do we recover? Do we need to pay the ransom? Can I determine what of my data is compromised before I'm told what it is? And how quickly can I think about ultimately getting that back? And those strategies have to start from the top and come down. Otherwise, they're very disjointed. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of uncertainty, and orchestration and alignment is key in order to making an efficient recovery if an attack happens.
Yeah, but I think, Bill, at the end of the day, the one responsible is the one who will be waken up at 2 a.m. in the morning on Saturday morning because the ransomware attack declared itself Friday to Saturday. So we do see within our customers a variety. Some companies are very well aware about security, like when you talk banks, when you talk government agencies, they have whole teams. You know this as better as I do, in charge of this. And our internal customers are being challenged by the security teams. But where it's fairly new, I think it's in the medical industry, for example, where cyber attacks, were never an issue until the ransomware attacks. And here we do see some medical centers reacting one way through setting up specific teams, and some others reacting differently. So I'm not sure there's a simple answer to your question, Doran, on who's responsible within the organization. I think the answer to this question depends a lot on the organization. What is sure is that what we see from experience is that at the end of the day, the one person being waken up at 2 a.m. is mostly the guy in charge of the IT. So it's
I can pretty much guarantee you the CEO and the CISO of MGM were up at 2 o'clock in the morning.
I think security is everybody's responsibility. It's a mindset shift. It's like safety, right? It's not just the safety officer's responsibility. Like everybody, if they see a fire, they have a responsibility. If they see something unsafe, they have to do something about it. But it does start at the top, because in a lot of conversations we have at lower levels, these people that are typically influencing storage buying decisions, the admins, they're like, oh, this I can use. I'm not really worried about the safety of this data. they're not really in a position to make those decisions. They don't really understand what's going on. They certainly don't know what's happening in the boardroom. The company could be up for sale or something like that. That's not going to be known by people at the lower level. This information has to be brought and raised up to the higher levels, and the top levels need to explain to everybody what the impact of something like a data breach is or a ransomware event of this type of data to the company. Because the reality is, when the organization gets hit with a data breach or a ransomware attack, the entire organization is going to be affected. And we've seen this for the last decade, as far back as Sony, where, a state actor stole all of the data from Sony, including at first it's all the high level people like the actors and the executives that get embarrassed. But then later they're just leaking information on regular employees, people that have left the company, their personnel records out there, and people are searching to see when they go for a job interview, what dirt do they have on this people? And it just happened again with the company where personnel records of people laid off are out on the net. So it's basically going to hit you just like the Colonial Pipeline hit you. This is going to hit you too. And it's really something that you have to think about, because it could be your health records and your kids' health records. And now you have credit problems. So it's really everybody's responsibility. They got to think about it more holistically and not just think that's their responsibility. And the CISO's kind of maybe wears the hat for making sure information security is there, but he's relying, or she is relying on everybody within the organization to do their part to be a good participant, not just do the job for everybody.
One thing that we've seen that I'm not very optimistic about, though, is the shift of power that the CISOs are receiving, both in decision-making abilities, but also in budget. Right? I know we are in a tough market, but that cybersecurity is not the area of the budget to cut. It could destroy your company. So what we are seeing, though, is much more sway, because now we know jobs are on the line. And it's not just the CISO jobs on the line, it's C-level jobs are on the line, whether it's breach-based and you've leaked information or you have severe downtime. So we're starting to see CISOs have more power, more budget. But like you said, Jonathan, as long as there's people, there's going to be something that goes on. Everyone is responsible. Every single person is a potential area where somebody can exploit. Everybody has to be educated. Now, one of those areas that we see in the tech stack is always going to be on fancy analytics, networking, but one of the most underinvested areas is in education. And sometimes because as technical people, we understand, we'll see a link and we don't click on it because we understand these things. But for many people answering 85 emails, they might not actually see the difference. And education can make a huge difference, but sometimes it's the last area of cybersecurity that gets invested in.
And we see the same thing, that for many projects, IT might not have budget, and suddenly security has budget. I mean, there's if we need to migrate huge amounts of data from one system to another, security will say, okay, those retention dates cannot change during the migration. We want complete chain of custody. So but it's unclear where exactly they live. They live between the data owners, legal, compliance, infrastructure, CEO. So, but I agree, they tend to get more power, and their importance tends to be much more global for the company. The fines can be huge. The requirement to report when there's data exfiltration, all these things make their job bigger than it used to be. So I think honestly that there's more money there nowadays than in IT.
But I think we have, as an industry, also we have a responsibility toward our end users, just to, I mean, Andy, you were talking about education, and Carl also. I think it's key, and taking the time also when we meet customers to explain why they should be doing this or that, or why they shouldn't use the product this way, despite the fact that it might fancy them, it might be much easier, is key to us. Some of our customers, due to the regulation and to the risk also on the data, had to go from being a single data center solution into having to have a second data center solution. Yeah. And some of them would be able to afford and buy, build, rent, whatever, a second data center. Some of them wouldn't be, and then would decide to go to have a mix between a physical data center and a part of this, and a replication of this physical data center on the cloud. So being able to help them doing the move, explaining the goods and bads of whichever solution is also a key part. And indeed, it didn't used to be the core of our discussions with our customers. We were more into how we are polishing our product to make it even better for them, to serve better the customers. It is now a big chunk of our work, not to create new key cool features, but to make sure that our product can be operated in a secure environment, that we are tracking CVEs, that we are proactively informing our customers about CVEs. I was mentioning making sure that our customers do configure the applications and the storage the right way. All of this takes a lot of, in fact, time, energy, resources, but we do think it's key to, I would say, to take our share into this difficult path the industry is going through with this these ransomware attack that, to your point, Andy, are more and more complex and ever more difficult to detect, for sure.
Yeah, from our experience, it tends to be the CISOs that they're the policymakers. The same way they build security baselines for every other layer of IT, they have to be doing the same for storage and backups, as opposed to waiting for something to happen or for auditors to start asking questions. I actually think the potential gap could be cultural between the IT or the IT infrastructure and the CISOs and their teams. Because in many cases, CISOs are not sufficiently familiar with the world of storage, and many of the storage folks are not sufficiently security savvy, although I think things are starting to change. I think in an ideal world, if the worlds of security and storage could kind of mirror what we see within security and network teams, which work very closely together, or perhaps the security and the server teams. I think that it's starting to happen. We're certainly starting to see it, but I think there needs to be some sort of kind of marriage between those two worlds. And certainly when it comes to education, I know, Andy, you touched on education, and Jonathan as well. When it comes to educating upwards, absolutely. It has to happen as opposed to waiting for something to go wrong. It's not just down to the vendors, us, to educate the market. We have to have both security and storage teams educating each other whilst educating upwards to management and making sure everyone understands the potential severity of what would happen if. Okay, with that, I want to get to the final part of the panel and the final question, which is, for everyone in this panel, what are your top tips for organizations to take away with them? What are the 2 or 3 things they need to do tomorrow to ensure their storage and backup environment remains secure? Jonathan, do you want to go first? I know you've been last with many of the questions. I'm putting you in the spotlight.
Sure. So I think, I think the first thing you need to do is get visibility into your environment. That's kind of key, having that long ability to look at what's happening in real time and historically, because with that, you can make better decisions and clean up the hygiene, right? Because you're either in one of 3 phases of attack: before, during, or after. So before, that's the time to reduce risk and improve your cyber hygiene. And visibility about who's accessing who's using privileged accounts, all that kind of stuff can reduce your attack surface and improve things. And so I think that would be the number one thing I would start doing. And then I would start, as you mentioned, getting the CISO and that security team involved to make sure they understand how security and data play together and how users and applications are accessing data. Because I do think in a lot of organizations, it's a little bit of a black box to the security.
One thing that I'll mention too, and Jonathan already touched on this, and I think we can all agree on this. Visibility is the most important thing. You cannot solve the problem that you are not aware of. That problem goes into areas of misconfiguration, but even data sources that you didn't know that we had. It is countless the amount of times we have conversations with CISOs. We ask them how many cloud services are you using, how many SaaS applications you're using. They're always wrong by orders of magnitude. And if you don't have an accounting of that, guess what? With SaaS, you could have a direct exploit or you're a victim of a supply chain attack. Right? There are multiple areas, there are multiple vectors there you have to solve for. You need to have visibility. You need to be able to build a plan. And one thing that I'll mention too, and as the resident backup guy, a backup is not worthy if you haven't tested it. If you don't test your backups regularly, they're not backups, they're not worth anything. So if there's just 2 things, go take an accounting, a serious accounting of what are you running in your entire development lifecycle. Meaning from bug tracking to planning to release to management, all of it. What are you running down to the microservice? Because that is critical. And then from there, make sure to actually protect it, to secure, to configure correctly, and test it. If you don't test it, you don't have a backup.
Absolutely agree. All of those points, right? All the points that Jonathan made and Andy just made are all completely valid. And, and then then making sure, testing them. Like going back to it, I don't want to make it sound like I'm a broken record, but it's what we need to plan for today. It's what we need to help understand and make sure that we provide the kinds of technologies, even if they're more pointed within our particular products, to help make that whole process more insight, providing more insight, more capability, and easier should that event kind of happen, right? But education is key, up and down the chain. The testing of all of these new environments, because they're so disparate in some cases, and making sure you have top to bottom alignment are really the things that are going to make the unfortunate need to do these kinds of recoveries more palatable, right? Just maybe a little bit easier.
I think on top of that, an advice also to the end users would be make sure that the partners you are choosing to help you with storing the data, managing your backup, creating your backups are reactive, because there is a big difference between being on your own, fighting against a ransomware attack, or having the help of the best key people from your best key suppliers. This might change fundamentally the speed at which you're able to recover from this. So choose your partners carefully, and choose partners that will stand by you until the whole infrastructure is back on. I think it's really key. Back to the complexity of the attacks, I think we'll see more and more different type of attacks. So it might not be there's never been a script you just push in just to get back everything back magically. There's never been that, but I do think that the complexity of the attacks makes that it's going to be more and more common expert knowledge being put together to solve the issue. On the feature side, I would say, just talking about just storage, the recommendation would be activate immutability. It's a very good feature to prevent backup from being corrupted. It's making sure you have really fine-grained user policies, bucket policies. This will make the job of the ransomware attack much harder. And then for sure, if you can do an air gap, if you can do a distant replication over an air gap, it's always better. I think, Bill, you were saying, I don't remember who was saying this. So there's no magic bullet. There's no one single feature that will save you. But the more complex you make it, the more difficult you make it to learn somewhere, the better. I had an example. For example, we had a customer who was attacked. We were not concerned. And I was like, okay, so I want to really understand what we did to be, left out of the ransomware attack. It was very basic. The ransomware attacked all the SMB, CIFS directories, and not the NFS one. We were on NFS, so we were out of it. But it was, I would say, here was by luck. It was 5 years ago. We've been working on that, but I would say technology. Breaking the chain of technologies, using different technologies will also make the work harder for the ransomware. So any of these to be used, yeah. Sorry.
Agree on all these points, especially immutability. That's a great advantage of the recent years. One thing I'd like to add is to visibility is basically knowing what you have, because unfortunate reality is customers don't know which shares or exports or buckets they have, let alone who the owners are. So it's impossible to secure things or to have decent backup policies if you don't know which department owns which data and what the value or semantics or regulation is around that data. So just mapping out what you have, it's like cleaning up your house or cleaning up your attic, is a starting action, not only for chargeback or showback reason, but really to get this security in place and to get the backup in place.
Yep. And one final thing, I want to wrap this up. I'd ask the security team two very simple questions. One, do your security policies cover specific storage networking, and backup risks? And number two, are you evaluating the security of your storage and backup environment on an ongoing basis, the same way you do it for your network, your servers, your OS? And that's really two very simple questions.
Excellent. Well, thank you, gentlemen, one and all, for that fine discussion and expertise. I wanted to come back in and wrap things up and give each of you an opportunity to do some self-promotion, whether that's your company trial, a website, a blog, LinkedIn profile, or your personal podcast. 30 seconds or less. Let's start with the other Jonathan in the group here, and we'll go counterclockwise back to Doran to wrap things up.
Thanks. Yeah. Love to have you come check out our website at racktopsystems.com. You can actually download and use a free trial of our software for 90 days at our Jumpstart program, where you even get full production support. And you can actually see a demo of our product stopping an insider threat, as well as a live ransomware attack and recovering from the ransomware attack in under 5 minutes. So check it out.
Excellent. Thank you. Erwin.
Hey, thank you. So yeah, check skyt.com. So if you're looking for some object storage, fully distributed, highly available, highly resistant, highly performance software infrastructure for private cloud, yeah, just you can check skyt.com. You can download an OVA of Artesca to see what a very simple, high performing object store is. Thank you.
Thank you. Carl.
If you want to have visibility and insights into your unstructured data, so that's SMB, NFS, so file, and all the object protocols like S3, then you can go to Storage Map. That's our product of the company, datadobe.com. And we allow you to organize your data. We allow you to optimize it. We allow you to start up replication sessions. And we are vendor neutral, so we're compatible with all the fine folks in this panel. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill.
Hi, and infinidat.com is the website. Check it out. We have a specific page on cyber resiliency and how it relates to our particular products, and in particular our InfiniSafe technology. We're an enterprise class system. We have to play and protect data in those particular areas. InfiniSafe covers all the 4 major elements that we talked about: immutability, recoverability, and we've actually added a scanning component to that too. So it's important to know when and how you get your data back, what's good and what might be compromised. So check us out, infinidat.com, and we'll look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for including us.
You're very welcome. And Andy.
Absolutely. Check out haiku.com. At the beginning, we already talked about how Haiku is able to help you protect your data regardless of where it is, whether it's fully on-prem, hybrid, or even cloud native. Doesn't matter. With Haiku, you can protect it. You can store it in storage of your choice. We are storage agnostic because we believe you should be able to make the decision on what best storage option you have. But what I want to quickly highlight is something called rgraph. This is a free service that we have on our website. We will be able to, within minutes, be able to expose and show all of the SaaS applications and cloud services that your organization uses, expose the ones that aren't protected, and help you build a plan to immediately go and protect them before it's too late.
All right. And last but not least, Doran.
The term visibility has come up a lot, and our product, Storage Guard, checks the security configuration of your storage and backup systems to ensure they're hardened and compliant with security regulations and industry standards. So for the first time, you'll get complete visibility of the security posture of your storage and backup environment. Check out continuitysoftware.com. Thank you.
And thank you for your time and expertise once again. That will do it for this panel. But if you came in late or missed any portion of this discussion, we encourage you to watch the on-demand replay at any time on the Solutions Review YouTube or LinkedIn channels. And please stay tuned to those same channels, because in just a short minute or two, we'll be back with our next data protection panel on ransomware proofing, data protection, and storage environments. Again, my name is Jonathan Paula. Thank you for watching. Hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.